Welcome to Piano Inspires podcast, celebrating pianists, teachers, and innovators as they share their inspiring stories about the transformative power of music.
Are you ready to take your piano journey to the next level? Introducing the pianoinspires.com subscription, your gateway to inspiration, education, and community. With a pianoinspires.com subscription, you'll gain exclusive access to hundreds of teaching videos and webinars led by today's top piano educators and performers. Whether you're a teacher, student, new professional, or lifelong learner, you'll find resources designed to inspire and guide you every step of the way. Your subscription also includes access to Piano Magazine, featuring the most current and up-to-date information for pianists and piano teachers. Each issue delivers expert insights, interviews, new music and book reviews, and more to keep you connected to the ever-evolving world of piano teaching and performance. Visit pianoinspires.com/subscribe and use coupon code podcast15 to subscribe for less than $3 per month. Thanks for listening to the Piano Inspires podcast and enjoy the episode.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sara Ernst, and I'm Director of Teacher Engagement for the Francis Clark Center, and I'm so excited to be joined with Dr. Janet Lopinski. Dr. Janet Lopinski has had a long and multifaceted connection with the Royal Conservatory, and this includes teaching in the Oscar Peterson School of Music, the Young Artist Performance Academy, and Glenn Gould School, as examiner of practical and theoretical subjects, and currently as Senior Director, Academic Programs. She has represented the RCM, the Royal Conservatory, in over 200 presentations over 3 decades, and assessed thousands of students, served as a mentor to examiners as chief examiner. She is a graduate of the Royal Conservatory with an ARCT as gold medalist, a bachelor's degree from the University of Toronto, and her master's and doctorate from the University of Cincinnati. She is also founder and artistic director of the Canadian Chopin Society. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, Sarah. It's my pleasure. I'm really delighted to have this chance to chat with you today.
Yeah, so we'd love to start from the very beginning. Tell us about some of your very foundational musical experiences, including some of your first experiences at the piano.
Thanks. It's so interesting because neither of my parents are professional musicians. They both left Poland during the Second World War and emigrated to Canada with very little and built up a wonderful family life for my siblings and I. And because they had not had music lessons were a priority for them. But without ever having taken any early childhood education or any pedagogical studies that tell us how important singing is, they both loved to sing. So I came to music really through singing. And sometimes when I speak with students and I ask them, do you sing at home, and their faces are blank, I feel so sad because in my family, singing was everywhere. It wasn't just Christmas carols. It wasn't just, singing hymns in church. It was sort of a part of our lifestyle. In Polish, there isn't only one version of Happy Birthday. There's a whole medley of different Happy Birthday songs. Every time we went on a car trip, the first thing we did in the car was we sang this morning hymn, which was basically thanking God for the beauty of the day and saying everything we do today is in your service, and in Polish, of course. And, one of the grace before meals was around. So we did a lot of singing, and without even understanding what it means to harmonize, we did it as a family. And so, both my siblings and I have, continued to pass that on to our families, and music making just in that natural, spontaneous way is how I came to it. So when I started piano lessons, it was sort of another form of learning about music, but music was already a part of our lives. And that's something that I've tried to carry over in my teaching, the idea that we're not just, trying to train pianists to win competitions or even, to pass an exam successfully, but to have music in their lives to enrich their lives.
So did both the music study and piano study singing and piano study kind of continue through your childhood?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My sister and I played duets together on the piano, but we also sang together a lot. We were both involved in the Polish Scouting movement. We were Girl Scouts, and we taught singing to our Girl Scout troops. We sang around campfires. We were actually part of this sort of amateur theater group, Polish theater group, and we did a lot of singing in smaller groups. We sang in a little church choir with guitars. It was sort of something we did a lot of together.
Yeah, and I think a lot of piano teachers who might be listening go, oh, yes, I love it when my students are singers, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, coming full circle, my daughter, who was also one of my piano students, I had both my children were in children's choirs, and she discovered her voice very early and went on to study voice, and she's a professional singer now.
That's wonderful.
So that's been very special too when we talk about that. But when I think about my first piano lesson,
I would love to hear about that.
Interestingly enough, I don't. From what I've heard, it wasn't. I don't know if I was a natural at the piano or if it was just a matter of I wasn't taught in a way that helped me to excel initially, because my very first piano festival experience, which my mother still loves to tell, was that evidently the piano that I practiced on had a little crack, 2 keys above middle C, and that was how I found my middle C. And when I got to the festival,
it didn't have that little crack.
And apparently, I don't really remember this. It's the lore of the family, but somebody had to come up and show me my starting note, and then I was fine. So you can imagine that affected my teaching very early. But after that, I did actually really love to play the piano. As a child, I did a lot of sight reading. I became a very good reader, partly because my older sister was always a grade ahead, and I liked to sort of read her stuff. And then very early on, one of my parents' family friends gifted us a Paderewski edition of the complete works of Chopin.
Oh, that's
which
a wonderful
she
gift.
had, and she wasn't using it, and she passed it on to us. And so I started very early on sight reading, perhaps ahead of my level. But that was an important part of my practicing, was always just reading stuff.
So did you stay with kind of a singular teacher through your childhood, or did you have multiple teachers?
I did not stay with the same teacher because we moved when I was 7. So I had one teacher in our first place where we lived, which was St. Catharines, Ontario. And then we moved to Mississauga, and I had a second teacher in the neighborhood who was picked sort of for proximity and convenience. And she was close to retirement age. And I stayed with her, I think, for about 10 years. And when she retired, she sent me on to another teacher. And actually, I inherited all her students.
Oh, wow.
Her young students.
So you were teaching pretty early on.
Yes. I had started teaching my younger brother, who is now a physicist, but still a very joyful music maker. He and his wife sing in a few choirs, and he attends concerts and is very active as a music lover, music appreciator, and music maker through singing. And he was my first student because he was not making out so well with that neighborhood teacher, and I was coaching him a little. I think my teacher gene kicked in really early. And then one of his friends came to me, and then when the neighborhood teacher retired, she sort of sent everyone. I think I was 14 or 15 at the time.
That's
so
amazing.
My parents' living room became my I like to call it my lab for figuring out how to teach.
Wow. So were you pretty much hooked at that point, like in the idea that you would take this professionally forward?
I think so. I think, at that time, I mean, I had my grade 8 RCM certificates. And at that time, there was sort of a thought that was enough to teach.
To be a teacher.
And so I was a neighborhood teacher. And then I started to be really, really excited about playing the piano myself. And I had started my lessons at the RCM, at the Conservatory in Toronto. Traveling to Toronto was a big thing for me then, from Mississauga. And I had my lessons there with a wonderful teacher who helped me prepare for my ARCT diploma. and all the accompanying theory before I graduated from high school. And at that point,
Wow.
by that point, I knew that I wanted to do music, and I think I started to focus a little more on my own piano playing as well. And I did study as a performance major, despite the fact that I was always. I knew I had the teacher gene.
Yeah.
I was always called to the teaching.
So in your collegiate years, are there any particular teachers that you worked with that really stand out to you in terms of how they nurtured you or worked with you?
Absolutely. I'm very grateful to every one of the teachers I had, because I really learned something from everyone. And I'm actually very grateful to all my fellow students, some of whom I've kept in touch with, because I think one of the things that I learned really early is that teaching and learning is so closely related. When we teach, we learn. We learn from our teachers, we learn from our colleagues, we learn from listening to music, we learn from experiencing music. And all of that is together. In the Polish language, the word for teaching and learning is very, very close. A student is an uczeń, and when you teach, uczy means to teach also. So it's very, very, I think, appropriate and significant. And that's certainly been my experience. And I think probably the teacher who had the greatest impact on me was Bela Shiki, who I studied with at CCM. And I remember when he was leaving Cincinnati to move on to Seattle, he made a lovely speech where he said that every time each one of us walked into his studio, he was learning from us, even as a great artist.
So you've had quite a journey through working with the Royal Conservatory. And I wonder if you could tell us a little how that came to be and how your journey, I guess, began from, you imagine finishing your degree at CCM and...
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. The RCM has been such an important part of my journey, both as a student myself, because as I mentioned, since my parents weren't musicians, one of the ways in which they were able to gauge my progress and know that I was in good hands was the fact that each year I would do an RCM exam and it would be the next level up, which meant I was moving forward. And as my marks, would be similar or better, one would assume that meant some upward progress. So that had been a part of my own life. And I think part of the reason I was able to start teaching at a young age, of course, learning as I taught, but why I was able to do it as a teenager was that I had that wonderful syllabus to work with. And so I sort of knew which sonatina to introduce first and how to start teaching the music of Bach in terms of progression and how to have a regime of technical skills developing through those technical tests. So that affected me as a student. And so it was a natural impulse when I was finishing up my doctoral studies and starting to think about the next step and about a full-time position. I did do the usual job search, but the RCM was on my mind. And so I did apply there along with other places and got an interview and was offered a position, and I felt like it was a really good fit because I was also coming home to where I had grown up, closer to my family, and that was wonderful. And so I started off. I was hired to teach piano and theory. And I started off, teaching in several of the different locations. At that time, we had not only the conservatory in Toronto, but a few sort of satellite locations. And I started building my studio from bottom up. I think about a year after I was there, an opportunity became available to also examine theory. So I became involved as an examiner first, marking some history exams and then other theory exams. And then I became the chief examiner for theory shortly thereafter, still when I was in my 30s. And that was a very exciting experience. And then I did the practical examiner training a little later and just loved that opportunity to travel across Canada and to hear students, and again, learn from hearing other students play and hearing the effects of the teaching of my colleagues on the work of their students, and meeting colleagues, which has been one of the great joys. So I did that for quite a while. And then, the opportunity to teach also in the Young Artists Performance Academy came up. I was offered the first year history course for the Glenn Gould School and later a pedagogy course. So my career started to evolve as a sort of portfolio career in a way within the RCM. I was still doing, quite a bit of playing. Somewhere along the line, I had my own children, so I was balancing work with parenting, and then the wonderful Jennifer Snow came along, and I worked very closely with her. She and I together developed the adjudicator certification program and started to expand the college into the U.S.
Yes,
I think that's
when we met.
When we met as well, and so that drew me a little more deeply into the administrative side. And then I guess about 12 years ago, an opportunity to have a full-time administrative position as the director of academic programs came up, and I have to say it was a choice or a decision. It was really a fork in the road that I took very seriously, because on the one hand, I was so still loving my teaching, and I was loving, the experience as a studio teacher of having a beginner who stays
so
with
wonderful.
you,
It's so wonderful.
and you see them grow into young adults, and they stay in touch afterwards. And I still really, really enjoyed all that, and more importantly, seeing how music lessons were affecting their development as human beings. I was still very much. It was a really very difficult decision. For the first year, I thought I could still teach a couple of days in the evenings after, and I very quickly realized that my current position is sort of an all or nothing. It's a 100% commitment. Yeah. So, but I think my main motivation was thinking about how my experience, having taught already then for several decades, and having taught not just at the college level, or not just beginners, but sort of the whole range of students, meant that I could bring that experience to the leadership role, and bring that experience to helping shape the programs at the RCM, helping shape how examiners are trained, helping shape the development of syllabi, and more importantly, helping support teachers across the country and across the continent, and having that opportunity to contribute my experience to that. Yeah,
I mean, I would imagine you've had some moments where you feel you've come full circle in a way, where you see kind of everything come together very uniquely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as a teacher, I've continued to have former students who come to me for coaching as teachers themselves now, or just because they want to learn a new piece and they think it would be fun to play for me. So I do that a little bit. And something that I'm very excited about is just a few years ago, I travel a lot still, and go back and forth between two homes. And so my neighbors have been very kind about helping to look after my home when I'm away. Yeah. And they happen to have a daughter who was about the right age to start piano lessons. So I very joyfully offered to teach their daughter, which I thought I could do conveniently, since she could be very flexible, right, just coming across the driveway for her lesson. So I started to do that, and it has been that's a full circle moment, coming back
to teaching a beginner,
which has been absolutely wonderful, and teaching her in a way that is maybe a little less formal than a weekly lesson in a school where the parameters are such that you can't say, oh, come back tomorrow and we'll finish up tomorrow, or check in, how's that going? Do you need any help with this? And occasionally being able to offer advice between lessons, or and it's also given me the opportunity to just have that closer relationship with my neighbors as well. So
So I might change topic a bit, and I wonder if you could talk about what led to the formation of the Canadian Chopin Society. I would love to hear what the inspiration was for that.
That's a great question. Yes, so the Canadian Chopin Society has been for me a great joy. It's been many things. It's been a way that I can give back to the Polish community because the Canadian Chopin Society originally was formed within the Polish community. Now we've sort of expanded to nationwide. But when the Polish Cultural Center in Mississauga, Ontario was built just about 30 years ago, there was a desire to have some not only Polish culture, as in Polish folk dancing and a Polish library, but to have the stamp of Chopin there as well. And so a committee was formed, and the decision to have a competition every 5 years in tandem with the international competition in Poland was made. And that was actually led by a committee that included my parents. I think I was still in Cincinnati at the time, and I was actually invited to be on the jury of the first competition. So that was my experience with it. And then in 2010, which was the big Chopin anniversary year, the thought to expand the competition to a full festival came about. And that was when I stepped in as artistic director for that. And shortly after that, because of the great success, we formed a not-for-profit and a corporation and are now a registered charity. And it has been so exciting to see the interest in the music of Chopin, who, by the way, I think is just a universally beloved composer, but for Polish people holds a very special place as sort of a symbol of Polish patriotism and nationalism, not just through his polonaises and mazurkas, but the whole idea that of the musical language that he found that speaks to everyone, even so many years later. So as you can tell, I love the music of Chopin, but I love the fact that it's a way that I can bring together my musical experience and musical expertise. And my doctoral thesis, by the way, was on the Chopin preludes.
Oh, really?
Which at the time, my focus was on sources written in the Polish language that had not yet been translated to English. And I'm dating myself a little bit. That was before the Berlin Wall had fallen. So it wasn't as easy to go to Poland to obtain resources as it is now. And at that time, I had an aunt who was a music teacher in Poland, a relative who was able to provide me with materials that I could read because my parents had taught us to speak and read Polish as children.
That's a big contribution.
So
yeah, that's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, and just back to the Chopin thing, it's been such a joy over the past 20 years to watch how the performing of Chopin's music has reached such a very high level in the hands of such young people, and particularly in Canada, where one thing leads to another. When one Canadian pianist is successful, there's a growing interest. And so we've had, of course, in the last competition, Bruce Liu, who was the first prize winner, and that was a wonderful moment. We've had some of our own winners from the Canadian Chopin competition, like Tony Yike Yang, go on and succeed first in the international Chopin competition and then with his career. So it's been really exciting. And it, in a way, in my own musical experience, I started talking about singing and a sort of maybe less sophisticated type of music making. And in my own teaching beginners has always been so special and important. And through the RCM, we're thinking about, bringing music to as many people as possible on a level that can enrich their lives. And then on the other hand, with the Chopin competition, we have that very sort of elite group of young people who've elevated their art to a level where they can perform in an international competition. So it's sort of the full circle, and it balances, though it's volunteer work for me, it balances my musical involvement in a way that's very special and meaningful.
Yeah, and personal and tied to your family and your own history. And
absolutely. Really... And this time around with our last Chopin competition, my siblings and I honored my parents by having a prize in their name. And my son is our technical director, and he did all of the live stream, the beautiful live stream that we had. So it was very, very meaningful to have my whole family involved as well.
So you've had such success in your career. I mean, you've really, like you said, touched kind of the whole gamut of piano education, music education, artistic development. So I wonder if there are any challenges or obstacles that you'd be willing to share from your path and kind of what those did for you or meant for you, how you overcame them.
I'm a sort of cup is half full rather than half empty sort of person. So I don't have a lot of regrets, and I don't really dwell on, I think hard work comes naturally to me. So I wouldn't say that things have come to me easily. But in the interest of sharing, when I think about challenges, I think there was a point in my career where maybe I thought that performing would be a larger slice, a larger piece of the pie, and I was striving to balance my love for teaching, my role as a mother, my personal life, the life-work balance. I think that continues for a lot of us who are very involved in work to be a challenge. And I think when you love your work and it's a passion, it's easy to be drawn into it in a way that it can be hard to find time for the other things in life that are important. And I think when you get involved in an administrative role, it can be easy, or it becomes even harder to find time for even things like practicing. Yeah. So I'll say that if I'm going to share one challenge, I would say that maintaining my own identity as a pianist has been a challenge. There have been periods of time, for example, that I've gone a few months without practicing, which when I think about, that's just not me. I mean, I love to play the piano, and then I give myself permission now to play as opposed to practicing. That was kind of a breaking point when I thought, well, I don't have to be learning a new piece. I don't have to be preparing for a recital, but I can just be joyfully
enjoying the piano. Yeah.
And, I do still love to do that. And I have a few party pieces that I keep up all the time. But besides that, I love to, I have something on the piano and try to read through it, or circle back to something that I've played before. Every time we publish a new edition of Celebration Series, I make it a point to play through it from bottom up.
Oh, that's
which I
so
love
fun.
doing. Yeah. So I still love reading music and playing. But the art of having a piece which you are tenderly curating and working on and perfecting and bringing to a point where you're ready to share it publicly is something that I haven't done as much as maybe I would have imagined I would continue doing. I've played a lot over the years with my daughter, which has been a great joy, and with other singers. And chamber music has been something that has been a great joy, and that I miss a little. I wish I had more opportunities to play in. That's something that I can maybe fix anytime.
Well, maybe it'll come full circle again, and you'll find yourself with an opportunity.
But I would say that would probably be the greatest challenge.
And I imagine that resonates with a lot of people, because I think as our careers emerge and as our demands in life emerge, it can be hard to carve out that time. And I myself like to just put things on the piano that are kind of an invitation to sit down and play.
That's it. Yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Is there anything that you're kind of reading through now at the moment? Like, what would be on your piano at home?
On my piano at home right now are the Chopin mazurkas. And that's just because having come out of our Chopin competition in January, our Canadian Chopin competition, and I had Chopin on my mind, and I prior to that, I think the last thing that was there were the Bach preludes and fugues, but there was a particularly beautiful performance of the Chopin mazurkas that made me say, "Oh, I need to feel that in my fingers," and that's what I put on. And once I started, I sort of was just I'm a systematic person, so once I start reading something, I like to go back to the beginning and go through
all
order.
the way through.
But yes, so that is what is on my piano right now.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah. So maybe we'll turn to some bigger picture questions. So I'd love to hear your perspective on music's place in the world right now and how you feel music can be used to help the world or change the world, or what your vision is.
Thank you. That's a great question. So, starting from sort of micro to macro, as music teachers, as studio teachers, we get to see how music transforms the lives of our students, and how a child who begins music lessons grows in their ability to communicate through music, in their discipline, in their problem solving, all of those things. And so that to me is sort of the micro. And then that child takes that to their family and to their community because they have this language that everyone can understand. They can share their music making with others, and that kind of expands outward. And so I think that every child we teach becomes an instrument for spreading the beauty and joy of music to others. And in the time that we live in, where there's so much uncertainty, uncertainty and turmoil, it's so important for young people, but all of us, to be grounded in some way. And I think music becomes that for many people. It becomes the way that we express ourselves. We dig deeper. Also, in a certain way, it can be a bubble. It's a protective place that we go. And if you think of that with each individual and it spreads, going back to the international Chopin competition or any other competition like that. What I've witnessed through the international competition is young people from all over the world coming together with a common love and passion for the music of Chopin and desire to play it as beautifully as possible. They meet each other. They communicate. They get to know each other. I've seen friendships form through this, and the same is probably true in other disciplines. But I think music has that special way of just bringing people together, and I just think that it can change the world.
Yeah. I mean, that community that we find of people who share similar passions and interests. I mean, myself, I find that so nurturing to who I am as a musician, and it's interesting to hear you talk about that in the perspective of the Chopin Society too.
And children and adults who have music in their lives and are in touch then with their creative, expressive part, and learn how to share that through music, I think are so much better equipped to then communicate in whatever walk of life they choose, whether it's, whether they become doctors or teachers or lawyers or politicians or leaders in any area. It affects their being and their thinking.
So if you think back to yourself as, that little girl who needed the crack on the keys to find her place, how do you think she got here? What were those things along the way that really made you go, yes, this is my space?
Well, that's a great question. And, when I think about that, a teacher does come to mind. But surprisingly, the teacher, I think that was pivotal in me realizing this was something that I really wanted and needed to do, was my middle school math and music teacher in school. He was primarily a
Okay.
math teacher. He also taught music. And he was a wonderful, wonderful mentor to me, because he had decided in our little, it was a new school that had just been formed, a middle school in an area where there hadn't been a middle school before. So I was in 7th grade, and he decided we were going to put on a musical in the school. And it was the Mikado, Gilbert and Sullivan Mikado.
Interesting.
And I auditioned, and I got the part of Yum Yum. And I was all set to make my musical theater debut. And as we started rehearsing, there was another teacher on the staff who was the pianist or the accompanist, but she wasn't so very proficient.
Oh, no.
And I was already, by that time, I think I was like in grade 8 piano RCM,
And you were a good
and I was
reader.
reading,
Yeah.
and I was a good reader. So we would get to the rehearsal room, and the music would be there, and I would sort of play for people, and people would be running their parts, and I'd be playing. And one day that music teacher walked in. I was in 7th grade. I was 12.
Yes.
And he heard me playing, and he was like, "Oh."
The wheels started spinning.
The wheels started spinning, and by the next day, he had asked me whether I would be interested in playing for the rehearsals. And so I said,
Okay.
"Well, but how would I do my part?" And he
Yeah.
said, "Well, let's see how that works." And by a few days in, he said, "You should really be the pianist." And so the second girl who had been the understudy became Yum Yum, and
Yeah.
I became the pianist, and I loved it. I loved it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And then the next year, we did Peter Pan, we did the Music Man, we did Cinderella, we did a whole
Wow.
slew, and then I carried that over into high school, and I just became. I forgot to mention that earlier. That was a pivotal moment, but I think the fact that this teacher
Saw
believed
that
in
in
me
you.
and
Yeah.
said, "I can do this," and that was really how I started performing more in public, and my love for music making in a group in that way was developed. And so he believed in me, and I think that's the key. And I don't think I really realized that until quite a bit later. And I think when I came back to Toronto after finishing grad school, I looked him up because it seemed important for me to tell him that. And I actually met him and told him that, and he was just so moved because he had no idea
Absolutely.
that would have made such a difference. But it did.
Well, and I think it's like sometimes that public recognition of what our students can do, even outside of piano study, because then we somehow realize kind of the impact of our own skills in this broader community. Right. And so I think sometimes in piano study, I love hearing stories like that, because we don't know the impact that we're going to have as teachers.
Exactly.
Yeah. We never know. So what advice would you give piano teachers then about, nurturing the next generation?
So I truly believe every human being has unique and special talents and abilities. And I think our role is to discover that and nurture that. And it's not a one size fits all. I think treating each person who we teach as a unique, as the unique, beautiful individual that they are, and finding what for that person is the most is what is that person's path, and how are you going to open, what role is music going to serve in that child's life? Is this going to be a competition winner, or is this going to be somebody who is going to play music for their own enjoyment, or is this somebody who's going to be reading a lot and doing a lot of chamber music, and finding for each child what that path is going to be, and guiding them on that journey.
And I'm just really enjoying thinking about, your start at the piano too, because who would have known a little girl who couldn't find her place on the piano, would have become, really a director at the Royal Conservatory.
Well, there you go.
It's a lovely, really moment, because we never, we have to try to see that potential in all of our students, right? For them to really have a deep impact in the world. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. So, would you talk a bit more about how piano kind of inspires you as a person? And I guess thinking again, kind of bigger picture, why the piano needs to continue to thrive and be a part of our world.
Yeah, and it's funny to think of that question, thinking in terms of piano as opposed to music more broadly.
Yeah.
But the piano is the instrument that for us as pianists, as piano teachers, it's how we express ourselves through that instrument, and I guess we could do it equally through speech or through song or through playing a different instrument. But I think the piano is unique in that it contains within it such a range of sound and color. There are very few pieces of music that you can't transcribe for piano. We can use the piano as an instrument to not only recreate great works that have been written before, but to create new ones, to improvise, to accompany choirs, accompany singers. The piano is such an important and beautiful instrument. It has such an amazing literature. But to me, the piano is the instrument that we use to communicate all of the our own emotions, our own feelings, but also to speak in a language that has come down to us from so many generations and decades of the past.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you mentioned Bach and you mentioned Chopin. Are there any other composers or musics that are kind of near and dear to you?
Well, of course. I love Mozart. I love Beethoven. I love Haydn, Schumann, Schubert, Debussy. I also, as a graduate student, I spent a lot of time playing contemporary music by colleague composers. So that was very special and important to me at the time, to also perform music by living composers and to be the person who plays the first performance of a new work has been very, very special. So, there are very few composers whose music I dislike. I'm dwelling on the classics, but I also, I love musical theater. I love jazz. I love a lot of different types of music. I mentioned earlier that folk music was an important part of my childhood, and one of the things I may not have mentioned is along with the singing as part of being brought up in the Polish culture, I also was in a Polish dance group. So I danced the Polonaise and the Mazurka and the Kujawiak as a child. So when I think about music, dance music is so important too for many people, I think, as a way that they express themselves through it. So, Chopin is for me the composer who resonates and has had the most important role in my life. But beyond that, I'm very composer friendly.
Well, that's wonderful. This has been such a lovely conversation today. I've really appreciated your openness and willing to share about your childhood and some challenges along the way and how your path has emerged. It's really been very inspiring.
Thank you, Sarah. My pleasure.
The Francis Clark Center is a not-for-profit educational organization that serves the advancement of piano teaching, learning, and performing. Divisions include Piano Magazine, Piano Inspires Kids, Journal for Piano Research, National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy, the New School for Music Study, Piano Education Press, International Online Teacher Education, and Piano Inspires Online Community Hub. Please visit us at pianoinspires.com to learn more about our impactful work and inspiring community.